we'll probably have time to do that next time.
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, but
Just that Kant just thought so.
he's like the passions, like, not,
No,
like,
yeah.
not going there. But, we'll do that next time. Okay, so we're just waiting for the connector, is that the deal? To start things off, is that how we do it?
Go ahead.
Oh, you're the connector?
I think so.
Oh, good job, sir, thanks. Okay, well, okay, so book one wants to get, in book one, Kant wants to get a couple things clear right off the bat, right? Y'all say that right off the bat?
Mm-hmm.
First, most importantly, he wants to preserve the notion of freedom. Preserve the notion of freedom. He wants to oppose any idea that, or any suggestion that any of us are predestined to do evil, because he thinks that's going to be fatal to morality. Fatal to morality, right? So he is a proto-Wesleyan, or Arminian, right? Predisposition, propensity, yeah, we'd naturally like to do something, but we're not determined to do it, right? It's not transmitted to us by others, okay? But still, this notion that humans are inclined toward good, he thinks that's just patently false, right? Now, another key thing is that he says the moral law itself can be an incentive. Can be an incentive, right? Can be its own incentive. Now, lots of people argue that you need an operator in the self, in the human self, in order to motivate people to keep the moral law or to act ethically, right? But Kant's going to say, no, the moral law itself can be that motivator, right? It can provide its own incentive. The incentive can become a propensity, something we're inclined to do, but still each act is always a choice, okay? Now, we notice that some people are just totally evil, or they do these totally evil things, right? Even when they know that they're going to be harmful, right? Now, that should be rationally, it should be impossible, right? It should be impossible, because if you know that overall you're harming others and the society and yourself by doing these evil things, right? Then it shouldn't be possible that rational people would do them. But a posteriori, we see that happen all the time, right? We see that happen all the time. So there's a gulf there between the capacity for evil, which you have to have in order, and the capacity for good. You have to have both these things in order for the moral law to be coherent and understandable. But it's irrational to that there is a fact of evil. So how can you get from the capacity to the fact? It's just an abyss, right? It's just an abyss, and that's what I think the questions are talking about. Join us if you want to, right? So a priori, there's a capacity. A posteriori, we observe the universal fact of evil, and that's just an abyss. But how do you get across that abyss? Why do people do it? He says it's self-deception, right? Self-deception. We deceive ourselves, telling ourselves that evil acts are really good, right? They're really good. I confess I have done this before, walking along Quaker Lane or Seminary Road by the seminary, seeing some piece of trash, and thinking I should probably pick that up. And then I'm thinking, well, I don't want Stuart to lose his job, so maybe I'll just let the maintenance guys do it. But that's telling myself that the morally wrong thing is really the morally good thing, right? Now, he wants to show us the role of religion. In book one, he does it through 4 steps, right? First, we've got a propensity to evil. Then we're always necessarily aware of the moral law. And then we are always capable of making a moral choice. And then what's the role of positive religion? He says, well, the community of the good has two roles. One is to show us what our moral choice consists in, and to recommend that we make it rightly, okay? Now, the problem is that, our understanding of this, of our original propensity for the good has been marred, right? And through self-deception, right? Self-deception, he says, has rendered, I don't mean like you rendered Lord, but has rendered the deeps of our hearts inscrutable to us, right? And our motivations are inscrutable. And if we don't know what a propensity for the good would look like, then we're not going to know what it would take to get it, right? So he says, well, because the moral law is grounded in freedom, we can know that it's possible. We can know that it's possible. So if we begin by doing particular acts that are good, we can hope that through grace, God will give us a little assistance, right? And help us achieve a good disposition. But we can't know how God does this, right? We can't know how God does this. And to say that we do, or that we know what the nature of grace is, he says that leads to fanaticism. That leads to fanaticism. That's in the Parerga, right? So book 2 then is, given that we have a propensity to evil, how can the good overcome the evil inside us? He says, well, if Christianity is true, we might say that that Jesus is kind of our archetype, so we just follow Jesus as our moral example. And we could try to order our maxims like Jesus ordered his maxims, right? Then we would have a practical faith. And you wouldn't need any of these sort of accoutrements of theology like substitutionary atonement or any other metaphysical theory. But they can be useful as a sort of symbol. But all of us, he says, would fall short, right? We'd all fall short of Jesus' example. And nothing we could do in the future could pay an adequate price for this. But we could still begin to develop a disposition toward moral action. Because each action that's oriented toward the good, he says, kind of builds our ability to do good in the future, right? So that's why people sort of use the phrase, fake it till you make it. But also every evil action detracts from this ability. But even in our lapses, he says, the idea of a good and pure disposition draws us on and gives us hope that someday God will help us attain it. And the reason we have hope is through Jesus' moral example. Jesus shows us why it's possible. It's possible to adopt moral principles into our disposition. And those principles, he says, are both necessary and sufficient to our salvation. And this is Kant's sort of philosophical gloss on theological ideas of repentance, forgiveness, justification, sanctification, etc. This is still in book 2 now. And then in the general remarks, to establish a religion of reason, he says it would be counterproductive to hold that miracles are constitutive of it. And here, you may have John Locke in mind. I'm not totally clear about how much Locke he had read, but remember Locke in his book called The Reasonableness of Christianity says that we know that we can accept Christ's word on the credit of the proposer, right, when we believe people. But why? Because he did all these miracles, right? Because he did all these miracles. So he's going to dispute that view. Locke's not the only person that had that view. He says it would be counterproductive to hold that miracles are constitutive of it, because remember, religion is treating the moral law as if it's divine commands. And if it's immoral not to accept the moral law, then it's surely immoral to demand that God give us a miracle before we will accept it, right? Further, even if we accept that sometimes God permits miracles or even does them, obviously we can't understand them naturally, because then it wouldn't be a miracle, right? And then we certainly cannot understand what principles God might follow in allowing them. And those that think that they can incur God's favor through the use of lucky charms, or, I've heard people like, does it St. Christopher? That's the
okay. Okay.
St. Christopher,
Not the cereal, got it.
isn't Chris?
Magic, delicious.
It's really like what? Like it's fine, but it's not like a miracle. Anyway.
It's a miracle that you don't get sugar diabetes if you eat it.
Yeah, that was funny. Anyway.
Yeah, I remember somebody talking about they carried a little statue of St. Christopher in their pockets whenever they travel. I think it's St. Christopher and the pink saint of travelers. And to protect them, like Kant thinks that is about as unreasonable as you can get, right? Like now, you know, I grew up playing baseball, and after I quit playing baseball, I played softball until I was 50. And I never once in 45 years of playing ever stepped on purpose on the foul lines. This is like a superstitious thing with baseball players. Kant thinks that this is superstitious. That's as unreasonable as you can get. But I think, well, taking no effort whatsoever, like better safe than sorry. But no, dude, you're totally unreasonable. So that's my little summary of what's going on in the first two parts. So now I should turn the.
That was longer than 50 words.
Oh.
The syllabus very specifically says the 50 words.
Sorry about.
It's all right. No, it's fine. It's just, you know.
Sorry about that.